Hey guys, you are watching your anime world. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see what if Deku became Spider-Man instead of All Might's successor. Here is short summary. When Izuku was cleaning the beach one day, he was bitten by a spider, and now he is on his way to becoming the greatest hero ever lived. Spider-Man Izuku. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. The scientists, their dedication unwavering, were deeply engrossed in their experiments. The laboratory, a hive of activity, was filled with numerous cages, each housing a different animal. One enclosure stood out among this array, capturing the scientists' attention. It was home to a genuinely fascinating spider. This spider, a creature with unique and mysterious qualities, is pure black, almost like a black widow. On the thorax were 3 purple letters, GER, and all over it had what looked like red energy flowing through it. This is test 956. The subject had a positive reaction to serum 9, and levels are holding steady, the head scientist said as she looked at the spider. Administrating gas sample 667SP2, she said as she pressed a button on a keyboard, and a green gas started to fill the cage. And venting gas, she said after a few seconds as the gas began to be beeped out of the cage. It looked like the spider was a little smaller but nothing else. Test subject 9 has been shown to shrink in size, but other than that, everything appears to be normal, she said as she moved her hand to the following key. As the electro-inductor's ready, the head scientist asked one of her workers. Yes, Dr. Corey, everything seems to be running as normal and everything is operational, a man with scales covering his body said. Thank you, Dr. Connors, Dr. Corey said as she pressed the key. Tiny arcs of red electricity flowed into the cage and hit the spider. Power levels are at 20% and holding, and subject 9 is gaining power, increasing power to 30%, Dr. Connors said as he turned a dial and more arcs of red electricity flowed into the cage. And when the life signs showed no change, they kept increasing the power. Subject 9 is dead, Dr. Connors said as everyone looked into the cage and saw that subject 9 was on its back with its legs curled in. Scrub and start from the top, Dr. Corey said as she sighed as one of the lab assistants took the cage away and walked out of the lab and over to a large chute. They clipped in the cage and led it down to the furnace. But as the cage reached the furnace, the spider awoke within it. As the cage door opened to push the spider into the stove, it crawled out of the cage, escaping from the fire and up a wall. It went into a vent and made its way outside before it fell into a drain. It landed within a styrofoam cup within the sewers before being ejected into a waste center. Hey, Yazoo, I've got a full load. I'll take it to the dump, the truck driver said as it got into his truck. You got it, Nakoto, a man with a mohawk of metal spikes said as the driver left. They drove out of the building and onto the main road, where they headed for the highway. Until he crossed into Shizuoka Prefecture and arrived at the dump, where he dropped off his load and was set back. Subject 9 left the styrofoam cup, ran into the grass outside the dump, and quickly ran across a town until it reached a beach. Takoba Municipal Beach Park to specific. The next day, 2 people stood amongst a vast sea of trash and other items, such as broken fridges, furniture, and other things littered around the beach. The first was a skinny man with sharp, angular features and long limbs. His neck was extended, and his eyebrows were absent. His hair was blonde and swept backwards, with 2 distinct wavy tufts sticking above his head, forming 2 long strands coming down from his hairline and framing his face. And he was wearing a white baggy shirt, baggy combat pants, and large boots. Next to him was a young teen with a round face framed by a short mop of fluffy dark green hair curled up at odd angles around his head, casting noticeably dark shadows onto itself. His eyes are large and somewhat circular, and his irises are the same shade of green as his hair, giving him an innocent, energized appearance. He has a set of 4 symmetrical freckles in diamond formations, 1 on each cheek. He wore a white shirt with the kanji for polo shirt written on it, a pair of light teal tracksuit bottoms, and red shoes. So are you ready, young Midoriya? The skinny man asked the teen. I am, but I'm confused. Why are we here? The teen said as he looked around. You are here so that you can train your body up so that you can become the perfect vessel for my power, the man told him, and with doing that, you shall be cleaning the beach, he said the young teen. Said the young teen, gaining a look in his eye, can I do something with the things that are here, he asked the man, who raised a brow. And what would you like to do with the things here, he said with a raised brow. Well, I was thinking about making some gear, he said as the man nodded. That makes sense, and if you can, I will allow it, he said as he bugged up into a larger muscular form. 3 hours later, the green-haired teen was moving a school desk dumped onto the beach. But he needed to see something using the desk as its home. It was Subject 9, so the spider ran forward, bit into him, defending its new home, and bit into his hand. The teen crushed the spider that bit him, but shockingly, it was not crushed or squished. Are you all right, young Midoriya? The man asked him. Yeah, I'm all right, All Might. I was just bitten by that spider, the teen said as the man walked over and started to examine the spider. This spider does not look normal, All Might thought as he looked at the teen. Young Midoriya, let us go to someone to make sure that you are all right, he told the teen, who nodded. The two walked over to the man's car, and he drove to where he knew someone who could identify what was happening to his successor. 2 hours later, UA High School, All Might and the green-haired teen walked up to the famed and #1 hero school in all of Japan. They found a small white-furred creature with a body that looked like a chimera but had the head of a mouse. It was wearing a suit with brown shoes. Hello, Toshinori, Chio is in her office waiting for us, and if you do not mind, tell me what has happened, the animal said as he led them into the school. All Might looked at his successor, who was looking dead on his feet. Young Midoriya was bit by this spider, and I wanted to make sure that he was all right, he told the animal, who nodded. The three walked into the school, with All Might helping his successor. After they walked into the nurse's office and All Might put the young man on the bed, the moment the green-haired boy's head touched the pillow, he was out like a light. What did you do, Marone? The school nurse asked as she looked at the boy on the bench. He was bitten by this spider, then he started to fall asleep, but from that I've noticed changes to him, All Might said as he put the spider's body into a petri dish. The nurse looked at the spider before her eyes moved over to the boy on the bed. Can you get the boy's mother, and while you do, me and Nezu and run some tests, the woman said as All Might nodded at her. 2 hours later, next to All Might was a chubby woman dressed in a pink jumper over a white blouse and a blue skirt. Her hair and eyes were also green but darker than the boy sleeping in the bed. Oh, Izuku, what happened to you? The woman asked as she looked at her son. All Might looked down at the boy who he chose as his successor. But he saw that something was off. Chio, something has happened to young Midoriya, All Might asked the nurse, who turned to him. So you can see it, she said, and Izuku's mother looked at her son again before her eyes shot wide. Is he taller? The woman asked. And muscular, the nurse said as the mother turned to the nurse. For some reason, the spider that bit him, it somehow did all this, and all the scars that was covering his body, along with burns, was healed, she said as the mother looked shocked before she gained a knowing look in her eye. Was the burn mark in the outline of a hand? She asked, the nurse looking confused but nodding. Then I know the one who gave him that mark, Katsuki Bakugo, the woman said as the nurse and All Might looked at her. How do you know? All Might asked. He has the quirk Explode, which lets him use his sweat to make explosions, the woman said with a sad smile. And his mother and I are friends from school, so when his quirk came in, I knew what it was, she told them. They said nothing else before the animal walked in. Hello, you three, I have found out some information on the spider that bit the young man, he said as the nurse and hero turned to him. What is it, Nezu? Chio asked him. It was a spider that was genetically enhanced by radioactive means that someone was using to help create artificial quirks, Nezu said as the three looked shocked. I do not know who made this spider the way it was, but from what Chio had said, it has given this young man an artificial quirk, and if the tests that I ran on the spider are proper, he has multiple powers, the animal said as the people looked shocked. But before more could be said, a group filled the air as they saw that Izuku was waking up. What the? He said as he looked around before his eyes went wide as he looked at Chio. you're the youthful heroine, Recovery Girl, the woman who found the cure to 5 well-known ailments, Izuku said as Recovery Girl looked shocked before smiling. So you know about me, she asked him. And what do you know about me? Nezu asked as Izuku turned to him. Your Nezu, otherwise known as Mr. Principal, is one of the smartest people alive and so bright that you ranked second on the level of intellect, with the first being the villain, Brainiac, who has the Korok supercomputer that allows him to analyze everything around him, and he can just look at something, and he will know everything about thine he looks at, he said as Nezu's eyes widened in both shock and amazement. You know your stuff, and I have to say I can't wait until you're a student here, Nezu said before he looked at Izuku. And I think you should look at yourself well, he told the teen, who did, and his eyes widened. How did this happen? Izuku asked as he looked at his muscular body. Our best guess is that the spider did this to you, Recovery Girl told him as Izuku looked at her. A spider bite gave me abs, he asked as she smiled at him. It would seem so, All Might said with a smirk. But I would like to know if you can do anything, he asked the teen. Izuku looked at his body before looking at the office ceiling. Let me try something, he said as he got out of bed. He walked over to a wall and started to crawl up the side of it, to the shock of the others and himself. And he kept climbing up the wall until he met the ceiling and, to be safe, made his way over the bed. How am I doing this? Izuku asked as he looked down at Nezu. If I had to guess, you have the same microscopic hairs has spiders on your fingers, and some use the flux of interatomic attraction to add to your sticking, the smartest in the room said. So I'm using electrostatic force, Izuku said as Nezu's eyes gained a spark that showed he liked that Izuku had a good head on his shoulders. Recovery Girl looked up at Izuku with narrowed eyes. Are you feeling all right? She asked, seeing that Izuku was now crouching upside down and looking down at them. Yeah, I think that it's thanks to the spider changing my DNA, he said as the nurse nodded. I did scans of you while you were asleep, and thanks to this confirms a theory. And after Nezu had said that you had been given the powers of a spider, that means that you now have the instinct to hang upside down, and to accompany you being able to be upside down, your body has changed to give you a new circulatory system to prevent you from getting whiplash, and that makes sure that it allows the blood to go back down no matter what, and a stronger heart that keeps your blood pumping no matter the angle you're at, Recovery Girl told him as Izuku nodded at her. That makes a sort of senses, he said as he crawled down until he reached the wall and calmed down until he was back on the bed. I'll run some more tests, and then you two can go home, the nurse said, and she ran her tests. Can you two come back tomorrow and then we can help Mr. Midoriya get a hang of his new powers, Nezu said as Izuku looked at the animal. But sir, I have school at, he said, but Nezu raised a paw. You no longer go to Aldera Junior High School, he said as Izuku looked shocked. After looking at the scars that covered your body, I have used my pull and know how to get a junior high school built for you here on the ground of UA called Kurenai Academy. It is a middle school where people who show the true essence of a hero can go, and as it is new there are only going to be 8 other students going to be in your class with you, Nezu said as Izuku's eyes shot wide. The teen could not say anything but nodded, and the mother and son were escorted out of the office. Nezu watched them go as he turned to All Might. Are you ready to give the boy one for all? He asked the man. I am, but first, we need to finish the task I gave him, All Might said as Nezu nodded. Then I am calling in both Torino and Night Eye, and you are telling them, he said as All Might sighed. All right, he said as he watched the teen leave. The next day, UA High School, Ground Beta. Nezu guided Izuku and his mother, Might and Recovery Girl, with 2 men with them. The first was a tall, lean man with sharp and elongated features. He had dark green hair with 3 yellow streaks towards the front, 2 on his right and 1 on his left, smoothed down and parted to his left. His eyebrows were also yellowish, matching the rims of the triangular glasses he wore and the strikingly bright yellow irises of his stern-looking eyes. He wore plain office clothes, a plain gray suit with gold buttons, a white dress shirt, and a red tie with white dots. Next to him was a short, elderly man with heavy wrinkles and a scrawny build. He has a light complexion and brown eyes. His hair is gray and spiky, styled short with some bangs hanging forward and a trimmed beard. He was dressed in a full-body monochrome suit with a yellow cape, a belt with the letter G on it, thick yellow gloves and boots, and a dark domino mask resembling two diamonds. "Welcome you two to Ground Beta. While you're here, we'll see if you have any more powers than the spider bite has given you," All Might said as the man in the suit looked at Izuku. As he was going to put a hand on the teen's shoulder, All Might grabbed his arm. But this was the first time anyone saw this happen. "So what am I going to do first?" Izuku asked them. Nezu walked over to a large machine off to the side. "First, we're going to test your strength," he said as he led the team to the machine. Once out of hearing range, All Might turned to the man in the suit. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked with a growl. "I was going to look," the man said, but shrank back at the glare he got from All Might. "Only do so when you have his permission. Otherwise, you're no better than a villain," he said, shooting the man's eyes wide. "And don't even try it. I have picked him, so don't even try to get him to pass on one for all to the person you chose," All Might said as the man looked shocked. "How?" he asked. "It was easy to put together when every call I was getting from you was about coming to your agency and meeting someone," All Might said with a wave of his hand. "And so I will say this here and now, Izuku Midoriya is going to be the 9th holder of One for All, and you have two options: accept it and help the boy, or leave here and never contact me or him ever again," he told the man who looked at the number 1 hero before moving his eyes over to Izuku and saw that he was holding 10 tons. But he said nothing as All Might walked over. "I liked how he handled that," the elderly man said as the younger man looked down. "Now, listen, Sasaki. One for All is not your quirk, it's his. I told you this before. It's his choice who he picks, so get it through your head that he has chosen the boy," the older man said before he joined the others. "It seems that is the current limit of what you can lift, Mr. Midoriya," Nezu said as he looked at the number staying as strong as 10 tons. "We also know something else," Izuku's mother said as Nezu looked at her. "He has early danger scenes, as a rub was sent our way from a villain attack around where we live, and he made sure that we could move out of the way," she said as Nezu looked at the teen as he stepped out of the machine. "I see, so for the powers that you have so far as superhuman strength, superhuman equilibrium, while crawling, and a precognitive danger," Nezu listed as the others nodded. "Then let's see if you're any more in haste," as he smiled at Izuku who smiled back at the animal. For the rest of the day, Izuku trained and discovered he had superhuman reflexes, agility, stamina, and speed. 2 hours later, after all the training was over, Izuku had spared with the elderly man, who was called Gran Torino, and that was when they learned he had both superhuman durability and a healing factor. 2 more tests before you can meet your classmates," Nezu said as Izuku said as he walked over. It was an entrance to one of the buildings. "I want you to sneak your way to the roof, as we will be watching on the cameras," Nezu said as a robot rolled over. A screen appeared showing the entrance, and Izuku made his way in. The adults watched the screen and saw him crawl up a wall, and then he blended into the wall he was crawling on. "He can camouflage, as there are spices of spiders that can do that," Nezu said as he smiled, and the others looked amazed. Recovery Girl pressed some keys, showing where Izuku was as he crawled along the ceiling. "It seems that, does not know that he can do that," Sasaki said as he looked at the screen. "You were right, sir. Night Eye," Nezu said as they saw that Izuku reached a door with a panel by the door. And they saw something that shocked them. He pulled out his phone, a white one attached to a pot on the side of the panel. He started typing on his cell phone and hacking into the door. "He knows how to do that?" All Might asked as he looked to his successor's mother. "Yes, he took a lesson on how to hack and made sure that he could use it when he became a hero," she said with a smile as Nezu nodded. "It is an important skill that would be needed," he said as the doors opened. Soon, Izuku walked through the door and continued making his way up. "He is doing good, and he's almost at the top," the elderly man said before they saw that he was then on the roof. "I have to say he did good," he added to All Might's shock. Who then turned to Izuku's mother. "Is the world ending?" he asked her as she looked at him in confusion. "Torino never says anyone is good," All Might explained. "Oh, hush you, I'm not that bad," Torino said to All Might. "I remember when I was his age with Nana, And when she did something similar with me, your words were the following, he said as he looked down at the man, and I am quoting here, that little shit will need to get his head out of his ass so that he can keep it, All Might said as Nezu looked at the elderly man. That's Gran Torino for you, Recovery Girl said with a smile as Izuku joined the street level. The next day, Takoba Municipal Beach Park. Izuku was cleaning the beach once more, but this time, he was sorting this one pile of stuff he was going to take to the dump. Meanwhile, he was going to use the other stuff. And out of the stuff he kept, he started to use parts and make starting. I'm something a small turbine pump to compress and shear the web fluid while pushing it through something that acts as a spinneret with a small hole that once meets the air solidifies, Izuku thought as he started to draw blueprints. The blue pints looked like two streamlined gauntlets with the triggers. The cartridges have to fit in the gauntlet, but how am I going to do that? He muttered as he moved things to a large warehouse on the beach. Izuku walked it and put the stuff to one side as he got ready to walk back out before he heard something. It sounded like crying. As he looked around the warehouse, he saw a little girl with white hair and a small horn huddled up in a corner of the building. She was dressed in a plain, short-sleeved, tattered dress, a dirty, pale tan color. Hey, are you all right? Izuku asked as he approached her. She looked up at him, and Izuku could see the fear in her eyes. Help me, was all she said to him. Izuku, his heart filled with concern and care for the girl, was on the phone as she slept peacefully in the small bed he had crafted for her. His voice reflected his deep investment in her well-being and carried his nurturing nature. And that's all I could get from her, he reported into the phone. I see that is not good. Do you have your web shoots on you? All Might asked him, referring to a previous mission where they had encountered a dangerous villain, as Izuku looked over to his workbench. I'm still making the web fluid, as the chemicals, Izuku declared, his determination shining through despite his challenges, a testament to his perseverance. I see. Well, I'll make sure that they work, and what I'm about to say next is going to be shocking, but I all might allow you to use your powers and support items to defend that child until I get to your location, he told Izuku, who nodded. Right, he said as he hung up. He then walked over to the workbench and started pouring liquids into beakers. He then moved his hand to a box named Oscorp, a collection of advanced technology and gadgets he had acquired from his previous missions, and pulled a small capsule from it, snapping it between his fingers. He poured the white liquid from within into the beaker. It was lucky that I wrote down the formula for the bio cable, and when I mix it with this, he said as he poured the substance in the beaker into a test tube. And he then put the test tube into a centrifuge and started it up. As the test tubes inside started spinning, Izuku looked over to the girl, who was still asleep. With a silent vow to protect the girl, Izuku's determination radiated from his gaze as he returned to the centrifuge. After 10 more seconds, I'll try the formula out and see how well it works, he added before going to a window and looking out. A ding sounded from the centrifuge. The teen then walked over and stopped it, pulled out the test tube from within, and found that it was a pure white liquid. So he held out a cartridge and poured the liquid into it. Web shooters, test 1, he said as he used his fingers to press on the trigger and outshot a thin sting of white webs that connected to a wall. After a few successful pulls, he confirmed the strength of the web. It was solid and reliable. He then shot a line up to the ceiling, climbed it up, and found that it was not breaking. Okay, so far so good for the 9th try, he said as he swung around the warehouse, finding that it was flexible enough for him to swing on and hold his weight. When he finished swinging, he let himself down and then put the 2 parts of the web on a different workbench, with 2 with a pulley and a button that looked like it was from an old game controller, a part of his custom-designed web shooter system. Time to see if the tensile strength, Izuku said as he pressed the button. The pulley started to pull the web, and a screen lit up, showing the weight and strength of the web stand. As he looked at the sleeping child, a small smile graced Izuku's face. Sleep well, little one, he whispered, his care for her evident in his voice. 3 hours later, Izuku was not at a workbench as he disassembled a robotic arm, with other parts arranged in boxes near the bench. The sound of movement alerted him to look over and see the little girl wake up. She looked at Izuku in shock. You didn't go, she said, and those words broke the green-haired boy's heart. "No, I'm not leaving. I'm here to make sure you're safe," he reassured her, his determination to protect her shining through as he walked over to the bed and gently placed a hand on her head. As his hand made contact with her head, she flinched, but when she realized there was no harm, she looked up at him with big, red, trusting eyes. "Now, let's get you something to eat," he said as he led her to the kitchen he had installed, his nurturing nature evident in his actions. With help from his classmates, he asked her, "So, what do you want to eat?" The little girl looked around before spotting a bright red fruit. "Can I have an apple?" she asked, and Izuku read over and cut the apple for her, making apple bunnies for her. "Here you go, Eri," Izuku said as he put the plate down, and the little girl ate the slices. The teen then walked over to a workbench and rolled it over to the table so he could eat and work simultaneously. "What are you doing?" she asked as she looked at him. Izuku looked at her and smiled. "I'm making something that can help me when I become a hero," he told her, as she looked amazed. "If I got my maths right, I should be able to have these cuffs sent a minor frequency through someone and shut down their quirk while they are wearing them," Izuku explained as she looked at him and then rubbed her horn. "Then could it help me?" she asked him. Izuku looked at her and then at her horn before smiling. "I think I can," he said as he walked over to a box and pulled out a watch. Returning to the workbench, he surveyed the parts laid out before him. "All right, I have enough parts to make the test cuffs and this," he muttered, his determination to create something that could aid him in helping the little girl. He then picked up a set of tools and started to unscrew the bottom of the watch and remove the inner workings. "If I take this out and connect that to here," Izuku muttered as he grabbed some solder and the soldering iron and started working. Eri looked on in amazement as she watched Izuku work. "Now by attaching this oscillator and converter to the motherboard along with this dynamo," he said as he took a small circular device that was in the robotic arm, and then attach it to this mirror wave generator, that is set to 14.1 UHz, he said as he screwed the back on before looking at it and then smiling. Izuku turned to Eri. "Here you are," he said as she looked at the device and slipped it on her wrist. He then watched in amazement as the horn on her head shrank. "Oh, you had a stockpile emitter quirk, and terahertz take energy away from the stockpile and into a frequency generator that sends out ultrahertz and then just keeps going into a never-ending cycle, away from the stockpile and into a frequency generator that sends out ultrahertz and then just keeps going into a never-ending cycle," he said, going into a muttering storm. Eri, though, did not seem to hear Izuku's muttering as she felt the energy that she was within her being drawn out and siphoned away to somewhere else. She looked back at Izuku with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered to him before hugging him. He smiled down at her and hugged her back with a gentle smile. Osaka, Shihasaikai Base, meeting room. Sitting on a sofa was a pale young man of a narrow build with short, shaggy, auburn hair parted to the right. His eyes are thin, his iris is small and gold, and he has relatively long lower eyelashes and small eyebrows. The lower half of his face was covered by a plague doctor mask. He wore a black dress shirt with matching dress pants, a pale gray tie around his neck, a belt with a long, thin buckle around his waist, and 3 beaded lobe piercings in his left ear. He looked one of his men in the eye. "So you mean to tell me that you lost the girl around Musudafu, and now you have no idea where she is?" The man asked one of his underlings, who looked at him. "Well, it's no," he was saying before his boss put a hand on him, and his body exploded. "Send one of our men to Musudafu and get Eri back, and I do not care how they do it. We are close to getting the bullets to work," the man said as another man with a plague doctor mask nodded. "I'll inform the ones in the area to find her and bring her here," the man said as he walked over to a phone and called someone. "Hello. We have a job for you. Yes, we will do this and make sure that your illness is taken care of. Good. Look around and see if you can find a girl with long white hair, red eyes, and a horn on her head. Yes, that's right. And when you find her, bring her to the base and we will make sure that your illness is taken care of. Good. See you then," the man said as the boss looked over. "It's done," he said as the boss nodded. "Good. I'll be in the lab," he said as he walked out of the office, followed slowly by the other. Musudafu, Takoba Municipal Beach Park. Izuku and Eri walked around the beach, carrying things around, with both of them carrying a box. "Why are you doing this?" Eri asked Izuku, who looked at her. "I'm going to be a hero, Eri, and my first step is to clean this beach. I thought that the best way to clean it is to recycle everything, even use the parts that are around here," he said as the two of them walked into the warehouse. "Oh," she said with a nod. They both set the box down inside before they walked back out, and that is when he spotted someone. It was a nab with pale skin, vivid green eyes, angular facial features, 2 scarlet dots on his forehead, and shoulder-length white hair, which he wore divided down the middle of his head, distinguished by an atypical, zigzag, hair parting with 2 separate partings on either side of his face. He wore a light lavender, loose-fitting, long-sleeved, zip-up shirt, black pants cut off around mid-calf and black boots. And he looked right at Eri. "Eri, get to the warehouse and stay inside until I say so," Izuku said. He looked at the man and ensured he had the gauntlets he had made on. The little girl looked confused before she saw the man and bolted to the warehouse. The man made his way over to the warehouse, but Izuku shot a web line at him. "Sorry, but I'm not letting you get to Eri," he said as he pulled the web line back, pulling the man with it. "Stay out of my way, and you get to live," the man told Izuku, who said nothing. He crouched, one arm touching the sand, the other behind him, and his hand open. "Never," Izuku said as he used his backhand to shoot a web line to a microwave and throw it at the man, who formed a bone sword out of his hand. "I see, so you've chosen death," the man told Izuku. The green-haired teen narrowed his eyes at his opponent before coming up with a plan. "Let's hope it works," he said in his mind. So he ran forward and went in for a punch as the man moved before he went to cut at Izuku with the bone sword. But the teen felt his new sixth sense ring and moved his body so that he could kick the man in the chest. The man stumbled back from the force of the kick. But when Izuku tried to pull his foot back, he saw it trapped within a cage that had once been his opponent's rib cage. So the spider-powered teen moved his body around and kicked the man in the chin, breaking his leg out of the cage that trapped it. "I see. You are going to be harder to take down," the man said as he pulled out a vial of green liquid. "And I did not want to use this," he said as he drank the liquid. And that was when Izuku's warning system was going off meagerly. As he started to shift in form, his shirt tore open, and he took on a dinosaur-like appearance, complete with a tail. Several large bones also protrude from his darkened skin, and he gains 4 distinguishing figures. 2 dark black curved-like markings under his eyes, 1 under each eye and 2 as elongated eyebrows, 1 above each eye. "What did you just do to yourself?" Izuku asked him as he got ready to fight. But this opponent said nothing as bones started to form out of his arm and spiral forward, encasing his arm until they turned into a lance of bones. Then he charged at Izuku, who jumped out of the way. And the lance penetrated the side of a truck behind him. He has somehow made his quirk stronger than it was originally, and he somehow has changed form, Izuku thought as he landed in a crouch and looked at his dinosaur-esque opponent. But he cannot think straight at the moment, so I just need to find a way for him to be near the bus, Izuku thought as he looked out of his eye and saw the yellow school bus. So he shot a web line at his opponent's tail and pulled on it. But the dinosaur man just flicked his tail and pulled Izuku closer to him. And so, without any other opportunity, the team landed on the man's bone protrusions. "That was not nice, bad Dino," Izuku said, looking shocked. He shook his head and attached 2 web lines to his opponent's back. He then pulled up and flipped the man over his head before throwing him into the side of the bus. He then ran over to his opponent, picked up 2 javelins, and pursued the bus with them before using his strength to tie both together and used his webs to make sure that they stuck together. He then stuck the javelin parts in the bus, holding some webs in place. And then Izuku did something that he did not know he could do. He put a hand as green electricity started to arc around it before he put his hand on the chest of his opponent's chest and both, shocking the man before he was knocked out. "How did I do that?" Izuku asked as he looked at his hand, calling on the feeling he had just felt as he saw the green electricity. "So am I gathering static electricity or am I using the electricity that I can make to stick to walks but using a kinetic charge to send the electricity out?" Izuku said as he stopped generating the electricity. He looked at the sleeping man before making his way to the warehouse. "Eri, it's over now," Izuku called into the building. And before long, the little girl ran into him. "Papa, you're safe," she said to him as Izuku looked down at her with a smile and hugged her. Izuku's phone then went off. "Young Midoriya, is everything alright? I'm only a few minutes away from you now. Has anything happened?" All Might asked him when the teen answered the phone. "Yeah, I stopped someone who was after Eri," he said as he heard a gasp over the phone. "But I managed to beat him, and I need to make more equipment for me to use," Izuku added as he rubbed Eri's head. "Well, as I said, you can use everything that you find at the beach to make the equipment that you need," All Might said before a quiet voice spoke to him. "Right, anyway, Nezu, Chio, and I will be there soon," All Might said before he hung up. After waiting around 10 minutes, Eri calmed down, and they sat in the warehouse. "I have to say, this is looking better than it did the other day," All Might said as he looked at the floor and saw a wooden floor. "I used some of the old timber that was dumped here, and the only thing that was wrong with them was that it was splintered," Izuku told him as Eri hid behind him. Looking at the adults with fear, "It's alright Eri, they're not going to hurt you, and I'm here," he whispered to him as she looked up at him, nodded before stepping out for the others to have a good look at her. 3 hours later, after the police were called, All Might said that he had given permission to attack the villain. They took him away and started to do the rest, ensuring that Izuku was compensated and paid for his work. After that, Nezu and All Might started Izuku training as Recovery Grill examined Eri. Izuku collected trash as Nezu used a paintball gun on him, so he jumped out of the way from any pellets sent his way as he collected the garbage. "It seems that thanks to the spider bite, he is quite the nimble man," Nezu said as he fired at Izuku, who jumped over a bookcase as he picked up some plastic bottles. "Indeed," Toshinori said as Izuku landed on a car, "and he is making good headway with cleaning the beach, as equipment that was just dumped here, he is fixing them up and then installing them into the warehouse," he said as Nezu nodded. "You're right," the animal hybrid said before they saw that Izuku went past them. "Are you alright Mr. Midoriya?" Nezu asked as the teen recovered in the air. "Yeah, when I was jumping around, I landed on that orange thing over there and was then sent off it with the same force that I landed on it," Izuku said as the two looked and saw a bank vault with a slight orange energy field over it. The three walked over to it. "So this is where the vault was put," Nezu said as Izuku looked down at him. "What do you mean?" he asked as Nezu looked up at the teen. "You see, around 15 years ago, the bank, Cerberus, had their vault stolen from them, but they had said that if the vault had a defense that could stop people from getting into it," Nezu said as he turned back to the vault, "but it was then stolen from their bank, but was said to be lost, and the head of Cerberus said that can open it will be able to keep the money within along with a bank account with them," he said as Izuku raised a brow alling with Toshinori. "And why is that important?" he asked. "Because Cerberus, like the fabled hellhound, protects their customers and their money, with them saying that the money that was stolen was the money of the bank, not the customers, so they made sure that everyone who was inconvenienced by this got €10,000, Nezu said as he looked at the vault. Izuku narrowed his eyes at the energy field before spotting something. "Nezu, is that a 746 shield generator?" Izuku asked the white-furred animal, who looked where Izuku was looking and nodded. "That it is, so we need to find a way to drain the power," he said. Izuku got an idea. He let out a breath as the green electricity formed around his hand. He moved closer to the thing he saw and then touched it. And to the shock of both Nezu and All Might, they saw that yellow electricity was flowing out of the generator and turned green when it met Izuku's hand. "Amazing, he now can generate bioelectricity and even absorb other forms of electricity," Nezu said with amazement. And after a few seconds, the energy field faded away. "Now, then, it's just opening the vault itself," Izuku said as All Might and Nezu looked at each other before smiling. "Here is a lesson of safe cracking Mr. Midoriya," Nezu said as he walked up and talked to the teen. Under the animal's tutelage, Izuku opened the safe as All Might called Cerberus Bank, which was sending the head of the bank along with one of its accountants. And soon, the vault door opened, showing stacks of money. All three of them looked shocked as they looked in and then blinked. "How much is in here?" All Might asked as he walked in, speechless. Izuku followed him in slowly. He picked up one stack and saw a large stack of hundreds. If I'm right, they only stack money like this before it goes into transit, so this holds possibly millions, he said as Nezu nodded. It could be more, he told the team. Izuku nodded, and then he seemed to remember something before running off and coming back. I found these as well, Izuku said as he showed both heroes' ATMs, a load of safes, some safety deposit boxes, bars of silver, gold, and platinum, diamonds, cash registers that had not been opened, and a golden cube. Nezu talked the team through picking locks and opening each of the things within them. And that is when the members of Cerberus Bank arrived. The bank's boss was a short, fair-skinned man with very long fingers and feet, a dome-shaped head, and no taller than Eri. He had a bald head, a pointed nose, and pointed ears. His eyes were blood red with no whites. He wore a black pinstripe suit with a dark gray waistcoat, a white button-up shirt, black leather shoes, and a blood-red tie. So, young man, how did you open the safe? The head of the bank asked as Izuku filled out the paperwork for him to be a customer at the bank. Thanks to one of my abilities that relates to spiders, I can absorb electricity, and so I drained the power from the generator until the tray was not Engu in it to make more and keep the shield up, Izuku said as he pulled out his Henko stamp and ink pad, and then stamped the paper with it. I like your stamp, the bank manager said as Izuku looked down at the stamp. It was a round stamp with a tree and two wolf heads, one on either side of the tree. Sir, I've finished counting the amount that is now in this young man's account. The man who came with the bank boss walked into the warehouse. The man had slicked back brown hair, with a single flicker of hair in front of his eye. He wore a black suit, navy button-up shirt, and blood-red tie. Very well. Dark, how much does he have? The bank manager asked the man. Name. Suman Dark. Quirk. Bring the wind. Suman can control the air around him and form it into guts that he can direct with his hand. He has 7,416,328,000 Aruadollars that will be in his account by the end of the night, Mr. Chong, Dark told his boss. Name. Agu Chong. Quirk. Goblin. Agu's quirk makes him look like a goblin from fantasy. Anyway, our work here is done, and it has been a pleasure. Oh, and a thank you. The money that you had gotten out of the vault and off this beach is not going into your account, but we are making sure that you start with that much, Mr. Chong said as he walked out of the warehouse, leaving a shocked Izuku behind. Well, that was certainly something, All Might said as Izuku nodded before looking at Eri. Hey, Eri, can I ask you something? Izuku said as All Might looked over along with Nezu and Recovery Girl. Yes, she asked as she looked at him. Do you want to come live with me and my mother? He asked her before she rushed at him and hugged him as tight as her arms could. She craned her neck to look Izuku dead in the eye and asked him the one question he did not think he would hear. Will you then me, my papa? Izuku looked at her before kneeling down and hugged her. Yes, he said as she started to cry. 5 months later, All Might walked up to the beach and saw it was clear of trash. He looked over to Izuku, who was running around with his new adopted daughter on his back as she screamed in joy. Well done, young Midoriya, you have done well, and now is the time for you to inherit the quirk, one for all Might said as he puffed up into his muscular form. I am, Izuku said as he set Eri down. Good, All Might said as he plucked a hair off his head. Someone told me this once, there is a difference between being lucky and being deserving. One is an accident while the other is a reward. So never get the two confused, he told his successor who nodded. And someone else told me that with great power comes great responsibility, so young man, take both what I have told you to heart as you have earned it. Now then, All Might said as he held out his hair towards Izuku. Eat this, he told the teen, who looked confused. What? Izuku asked the man. Izuku walked up to UA with one of his best friends. He was a striking figure. A tall young man with messy, indigo-colored hair and captivating purple eyes. His unique appearance was accentuated by his straight teeth and the dark eye bags underneath his half-closed eyes. Both wore tracksuits, with Izuku wearing a light green one and the other boy wearing a dark blue one. So, Spidey, what's the plan? Toshi inquired, catching Izuku's attention. Not a clue, Toshi, not one, Izuku confessed to his friend as they stepped onto the school grounds, the mystery of the school's activities piquing their curiosity. But from what I know, was that the normal students have to fight robots. From what his sister told him, he shared with the purple-haired teen. "Oi, Deku, what are you doing here?" Another teen the same age as the two boys screamed at Izuku, who turned to the angry blonde with a raised brow. He is a young man of average height with a slim, muscular build and a fair skin tone. He has short, spiky, sandy blonde hair with choppy bangs that hang over his eyebrows. His eyes are sharp and bright red. He was dressed in a black shirt and tracksuit bottoms. "What do you want, Kachan?" Izuku asked as the two teens continued to move toward the building. Kachan looked at Izuku with hate before seeing the crowd around them and scoffing before storming into the school. "Wow, now that is an angry Pomeranian right there," Toshi said with a nod while Izuku smiled at him. "I know, and I used to be friends with him," Izuku said as they walked forward. The two walked into the hall and found their seats. When they sat down, Izuku pulled out web shooters and started to check them over. "Make sure you have enough web fluid," Toshi asked, and Izuku nodded before clasping the shooters to his arms. "Yep, you're going to check your Eskrima sticks to make sure that they're in working order," he asked as the purple-haired teen pulled out some with two button-like weapons. After a few more minutes, the room was filled with hopeful students as a man with a tall hairstyle walked in wearing a leather jacket and pants. "Yeah," he screamed out as everyone looked at him. "Hello UA candidates and welcome to this year's entrance exam, and thank you for turning into your school DJ," the man said with a dazzling smile as he looked at them. "Come one and let me hear ya," he asked the crowd. "Yeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeee pointed at him. I like you, kid, and the rest of you got to ease up a bit, but fine for now, so let's get to the main show, he said as he posed. So here is the practical exam, which will go down, he added as the screen above him changed. Oh my god, it's the voice hero. Present mic, Izuku said with a significant smile. Name: Hisashi Yamada. Hero name: Voice hero. Present mic. Hero rank: 16. Quirk: Voice. Present mic's quirk allows him to increase the volume of his voice, giving him an ability similar to a sonic scream. The sound from present mic's quirk is strong enough to cause people's ears to bleed from far away. Spidey, Toshi, called to Izuku, who shook his head. Today, you all will have 2 tests, a written test and a mock battle in an urban setting, and then drop the mic here. You all will head to the written exam before you all head to a bus where you will be brought to your specified battlefield. How does that sound good? Present mic told them all. Izuku looked down at the card that he was given. I'm at B, Izuku told his friend. And I'm at D, Toshi told him. Now, then, let's check out the 3 types of enemies you will face out there. Present mic said as the screen behind him showed a cartoony city with 3 silhouettes of the enemies appearing in the corners. These are 3 types of foe villains out in the test, with each one increasing in difficulty, and depending on the difficulty you will be attributed points, but I want you all to keep it heroic out there, so if you attack the other examines out there, that is an instant fail, he added as the angry Pomeranian scoffed before someone stood up. At the same time, Izuku went into a mutter storm about the score he would need to get in. Excuse me sir, I have a question, he said as he held his hand up straight. Hit me, present mic said as he pointed at the teen who stood up, and a spotlight showed down on the boy. On the printout, you listed 4 types of villains, not 3, the teen said as he pointed at the printout, and everyone saw that there were indeed 4 villains. With all due respect, if this is an error in official UA material, it is shameful, and we are exemplary students, we expect the best from Japan's top hero school. A mistake such as this should not do, he said before he turned around and pointed at the muttering Izuku. And you have been muttering this entire time. Stop that, he ordered Izuku. The teen flinched as Toshi narrowed his eyes at the teen. And how about you let the teacher, here at UA, finish explaining before saying anything? He said as he looked at the teen, who looked shocked. And I don't think that it's very heroic to point out someone's nervous tick, Toshi added as the teen sat down. The other students chuckled at the teen for being told off as Izuku smiled at Toshi. He's right, you know, as I have this happen of making my voice do this. Present Mike said, speaking like a showman, and to answer your question, the fourth villain type is worth 0 points. There's one of these in each battle sector, and think of them as hurdles that you must try to avoid. It's not that it can't be beaten, but it's no point, so I recommend my listeners try to avoid them as much as possible. He informed them as people started to talk. Now then, I'll give you all a brief message from our principal. Present Mike told them as a picture of Nezu appeared on the screen. Name: Nezu. Hero name: Mr. Principal. Hero rank: 19. Quirk: high specs. Nezu's quirk grants him a high level of intelligence that surpasses that of humans. Nezu's quirk enables him to live freely like a normal person, despite being an animal. Hello, brave hopefuls. I cannot wait to meet every one of you if you pass both the written test and the heroic test. Now then, I would like you all to know that this year, UA will be getting some new teachers and staff to the school, and with this, it's the end of this short amusement. Our school's librarian shall lead you over to the exam hall for the written part of the acceptance exam, Nezu said as a man walked in. The man had a boyish face, with large hazel eyes and a small pointed nose that was always distinctly red. His blonde hair was styled in a long undercut with bangs over his entire forehead, and he had noticeable defined eyebrows and sideburns. His frame was, as it has always been, relatively small and lacking in muscle but not definition. Spidey, Toshi, asked the teen next to him. That's Titanus Colossus. He's known as the most muscular man apart from All Might and stopped the villain Colossus, Izuku said as he gushed at the newest hero. Name: Armin Arlert. Hero name: Titanus Colossus. Hero rank: 99. Quirk: Colossus Titan. This quirk allows Armin to change his form into a Colossus humanoid. Can you all follow me? Titanus Colossus asked everyone as they got up and followed him. Toshi had to lead Izuku out of his seat and have him follow the others. He then led them into a large hall with many desks. Were these from that beach you cleaned with Toshinori-sensei training you? Toshi asked Izuku, who nodded. Yeah, I fixed them up, and they are going to be used for exam desks from now on, Izuku said as he found his desk. Next, his was the desk that Toshi, or, rather, Hitoshi Shinso, would use as the purple-haired teen sat down. Once everyone had finished, Titanus Colossus started handing out papers to everyone. Now, everyone has 1 hour with this test. It covers math, language, science, heroics, and other lessons that we will cover at UA, he told everyone in the hall. Once the last person was given a test paper, Titanus Colossus looked up at the clock and saw that it was 11 o'clock. Right, you have until 12 o'clock, so start, he told them as everyone started to fill out the test. 1.5 hours later, testing site B. Izuku was stretching his legs as people looked at him, not doing anything. I would stop that as it is very distracting, the teen who shouted at him yelled at Izuku. However, the teen did not hear him as he had earphones in while listening to some music. Hey, big guy, you're kind of distracting with all your yelling, a girl with orange hair told him as he gasped. But before he could apologize, the gates started to open. Izuku looked up and took his earphones out before jumping into action. What he doing? A boy asked before the voice of Present Mike filled the air. It's time for you to get moving, as there are no countdowns for real battles, he called out as they all saw Izuku zone in on a one-pointer. It had 2 arms with mini guns and a single wheel instead of legs. Sorry baby, but you're scrap, Izuku said as he punched it and sent its head flying off. And into another one-pointer. Maybe I should hold back a little, Izuku thought as he shot a web line to a building and swung around to find more robots. All Might said that a passing score for me to get into UA is around 60, so if I aim for that and help others out I should be fine, he told himself within his mind as he saw a girl with purple hair and long earlobes. And she was going against a 2-pointer. It looked like a 4-legged scorpion without pincers. It looked like she was being boxed in, so Izuku shot 2 web blasts down while in the air and stuck the robot's legs to the floor. The girl used her ear pole jacks to dig into its head, breaking it. She looked up toward Izuku, who gave her a two-finger salute as he dove leg first into a three-pointer. They had two back wheels with two arms and a knight helmet-like head. Ground floor, scrap metal, Izuku said as he put his leg through the robot. Ding, he said as he landed. He then jumped off to find more robots. Observation room. This batch is doing good, a woman dressed as a dominatrix said as she watched a girl with blushes on her cheeks take out 3 robots simultaneously. Some are going to the speedy route while others are going for power above everything, Nezu said as he looked at the screen with the angry blonde that Izuku warned him about. And Nezu knows how to take precautions. And there is a select few helping people out this year, way more than previous years, a woman with blue and pink hair said as she rubbed her chin. While there is still time to go, but I think that it's time to see if these hopefuls can have what it means to be a hero, All Might said as he walked up and pressed a button. 0 pointers activated all over the battlefields and began to move through the city. All Might then turned to a screen that showed Izuku taking out 2 2-pointers before going after a 1-pointer. Testing Site B. Izuku attached a web line to a 1-pointer and threw it at 3 3-pointers. A tingle went off in his head as he backflipped over a 2-pointer and sent a blade of electricity, or, as he called it, venom blast, through the target. Right, I should have around 30 points, and if that noise is anything that I have learned, it is a 2-pointer. Izuku thought as he attached his line to a building, swung towards the noise of A, and saw that a 3-pointer was going after a petite teen with purple balls for hair. So he attached a web line to the 3-pointer and threw it over his head into a small swarm of bots heading his way. That should give me 52 points. Is that noise? Izuku asked as he heard a rumbling. He turned to see a towing robot going through the city. So that the 0-pointer, Izuku muttered as he saw people run away from the robot. And he was about to do the same. But then, my leg, I can't move it, a girl said. Izuku looked back and saw that a girl with a blush on her cheeks was trying to get her leg unstuck while the girl with long earlobes was trying to help her. And so Izuku jumped into action as the voice of Present Mike filled the air once more. 2 minutes remaining, he told everyone who had stopped to watch as Izuku swung towards the 0-pointer. So he's going to be the true hero this year, Present Mike thought as he and everyone watched Izuku move through the air. Observation room. The teachers at UA watched this, and some smiled at Izuku while All Might could not keep his smile off his face. While no combat points are awarded for taking out that gigantic foe, it's to show what you're really made of and embody what it means to be a hero, All Might said as he watched his sucker get to work. The girls at the bottom watched as Izuku web up the 0-pointer to the sides of the buildings before flipping high into the sky. Then he clenched his right fist as red veins formed over his body and cyan arcs of electricity formed around Izuku. And he shone as bright as the sun as he gathered his bioelectricity around his hand. Izuku looked down at the 0-pointer with determination. He punched the robot with his spider-enhanced strength at full power and won for all. The result was that the head was knocked off the body before he swung down to the ground as the 0-pointer started to spark behind him. Everyone watched as the robot exploded behind him when he landed in a crouch on the ground. Times S, Present Mike told everyone as the teen that reprimanded Izuku earlier watched as the spider-powered teen walked over and lifted the rubble off the girl. Why did he do that? It was not worth anything, a teen with spiked hair asked. I don't know, but I do know that he looked cool doing it, a girl said as Izuku helped the girl up to her feet. Did they not see what he did? The teen asked as he watched Recovery Girl walk into the testing site and start helping the students. He risked not getting more points to save that girl, he added as he saw that Recovery Girl go over and kiss the girl on the cheek and heal her. I would have done the same if, he thought before his eyes shot wide, the judges are watching this, that means that they saw him save her, he told himself in thought. Izuku helped the girl to her feet. Are you all right? He asked her as she nodded. Yay. I'm fine, but why did you do that? She asked him as Izuku blinked at her. It's what heroes do, Izuku said with a smile. She looked shocked before smiling at him. What's your name? She asked him. Izuku Midoriya, Izuku told her as she smiled at him. I'm Ochako Uraraka, the girl with the blushes said to him. And I'm Kyoka Jiro, and thanks for the save, the girl with the long ear lobes told him. No problem. he said as they all started to leave. 3 days later, Midoriya apartment. Izuku and Eri sat at the dinner table, and Izuku's mother started to make them food. Then, a letter was posted through the door. "I'll get it," Eri said as she went to get it. "That girl Rayleigh has chagged since as you've taken her in," the teen's mother said. Izuku smiled as he watched Eri come sprinting back with a giant smile. "Papa, Grandma Inko," she said as she showed Izuku a letter that looked to be from UA. Izuku looked down at the letter before quickly tearing it open as a disc fell out. It then lit up, and a hologram of All Might in his muscular form appeared on the screen. "I am here as a hologram to present you the results," the hologram said, and Inko, Eri, and Izuku looked shocked. "That's from UA, so why is All Might there?" Izuku asked as he looked confused. "I'm sorry this letter has taken so long, but with great power comes greater paperwork. You were looking at the newest teacher at UA, All Might said as Izuku's eyes were close to popping out of his skull. "Grandpa Toshi is going to be your teacher, Papa?" Eri asked as Inko and Izuku nodded. "Now then, you passed the written test with flying colors, so much so that Nezu wants you to take his class. You scored 52, and that would have been a passing mark, but that villain points is not the only thing you were being scored on," All Might told Izuku, who looked even more confused. There was another type of points they were being awarded, rescue points, for helping the others, and here is some short clips for your view pleasure. All Might is videos of him helping people out. And the one where he took out the 0-pointer. Eri watched in amazement while Inko looked faint. Then, a video of Ochako appeared on the screen. Do you have a sec? Sorry to interrupt, but I talk with you," she seemed to ask someone off camera as the video changed to her talking with present mic. "Izuku Midoriya, I was wondering if you could give his some of my pints for what he did, as when my leg was beep, that 0-pointer was going to cush me but me saved me, so," she said before the hero put a hand on her head. "There no need for that, as he'll do fine, little listener, so don't worry about it," he said as All Might turned back to the camera, and in doing so, Izuku. "So you see, thanks to you now having both a quirk and spider powers, it is neither of them that makes you a good hero," All Might said as another video was shown. This time, Kyoka asked the same thing as Ochako. "As I have said, we have rescue points that are awarded by a panel of judges, and they will award points for heroic acts, and not just fighting villains, and so Izuku Midoriya, you were awarded 151 rescue points. That makes a total of 203, and that has beaten my score that was 199, All Might told Izuku, who looked amazed with Eri squealing in happiness, and the two girls also passed, with them both getting 45 rescue points, he said Izuku as a scoreboard showed on the screen. Rank. Name. Villain points. Rescue points. First, Izuku Midoriya 52-151. Second, Katsuki Bakugo 77-0. Third, Eijiro Kirishima 39-35. Fourth, Ochako Uraraka 28-45. Fifth, Kyoka Jiro 26-45. Sixth, Abara Shiozaki 36-32. Seventh, Itsuka Kendo 25-40. Eighth, Tenya Ida 52-9. Ninth, Tetsu 49-10. 10th, Fumikage Tokiyami 47-10. Izuku looked amazed at his score while his mother was also in shock. "This young Midoriya is your hero academia," the hologram said as he bowed at Izuku. Thought the hologram. Inko turned to her son as tears started to stream down her face. As she looked at her son, "Izuku, I'm so proud of you. Now why don't you call your friends around so we can all celebrate," she told him as Izuku nodded at her and pulled out his phone. When he got into the group chat, he saw something that made him sad. "Toshi did not get into the hero course," Izuku said as Inko sighed. "Someone must have to make sure that someone with his quirk was not fit to be a hero," she said, shaking her head. 5 hours later, a party was thrown for Izuku, and his classmates and their families were brought in to celebrate their getting into their chosen schools. The first was a tall, well-built young man with buzzed, dark brown hair and black eyes. He wore dark blue jeans with a shirt and a satellite picture of a cyclone. With him was his mother and father. His father was a handsome young man. He was tall, with windswept dark brown hair, pale skin, and amber-colored eyes. He wore a buttoned-up black shirt, a navy blue contractor jacket, and dark gray pants. The boy's mother has lavender eyes and honey-colored hair that seems to be held up in a low bun. She wears a mint and white dress. Next was a teen with messy, jet black hair that swept down on his pale skin. He had intense blue eyes, slightly pointed ears, and a long, black, furry tail. He was dressed in dark blue jeans with a blue hoodie. Next to him was his brother, who had teal eyes and dark brown hair and wore glasses for nearsightedness. He has 2 moles under his left eye and 1 under his mouth. He also has slightly pointed ears. He wore combat pants, a plain white shirt, and a dark yellow cardigan. His father was dressed in a 3-piece with long white hair and a long, black, furry tail. His eyes were blue with slit pupils as he looked at his sons with a smile. The mother was a beautiful young woman with a slender figure and petite appearance. She had pale skin, a round face with few moles, big, intense teal eyes, and long, wavy dark brown hair. She wore a black coat, a pink scarf, and a dark blue skirt. The next was a young man of average height with shaggy black hair, round black eyes, and a slim, muscular build. A straw hat with a red sash topped his head, and his other clothes included a red vest, light blue denim shorts cuffed just above his knees, and tan sandals. His father was a tall, middle-aged man with spiky black hair and a widow's peak. He also had a bit of stubble on his chin. He wore an untucked white shirt with green jeans. On the other hand, his wife wore an elegant black dress and was tall with a large chest and broad shoulders. She had pale skin and nape-length black hair and was kept neatly combed back. Her black eyes are deep-set and heavy-lidded, and she has thin eyebrows. Then there was Hitoshi, but his clothes were black jeans and a white shirt with a rainbow of lines covering them. His father was a tall, attractive man with tan skin and a muscular build. He has golden eyes and long, purple hair tied in a ponytail. He wore loose dark red pants with a red muscle shirt. Then was a reasonably tall, lean-built young man with peach skin, spiky orange hair, and brown eyes. He likes to wear slim-fitting clothes. He wore a dark blue shirt patterned with the number 15 and black cargo pants. He had his 2 younger sisters with him. The first had dark gray eyes and black hair that was straight and cropped to hang around her face, just above her shoulders. Her eyes were large and dark. She wore knee-length leggings, shorts, and a red shirt with a wolf picture. His other sister was a stark contrast to her sisters. She had short, light blonde hair with short bangs hanging over the right side of her forehead. She also wears a red hair clip on the left side of her head. Her eyes are dark brown and appear much softer than her siblings. She was dressed in a light blue dress. And out of her back was a pair of golden wings. The father was a tall, muscular man with spiky black hair and brown eyes. He had thin facial hair around his mouth and on his cheeks. He wore a casual red shirt and dark gray trousers. While the mother was an average-sized woman, she had fair skin and long, light, wavy brown hair down to her back, which she usually had tied in a knot in the back and bangs down to her chin in the front. She typically wore plain dresses and wore lipstick on occasion. She had brown eyes. And like her daughter, she had wings on her back. The next member of Izuku's class was a short, slim teenage boy with spiky brown hair and brown eyes. He wore a white hoodie with long orange sleeves and green pants. His mother was a petite, thin woman with brown eyes and short brown hair in a bob style. She was dressed in a white blouse with a dark pink skirt. His father had short blonde hair and a tall, muscular build. He wore a white tank top and an orange construction work jumpsuit, with the upper half often tied around his waist. Next was a teen with yellow blonde, spiky hair and blue eyes, whisker markings on his cheeks. He wore an orange and black jacket with orange pants. Flowing behind him were 9 fox-like tails. His father had the same blonde hair and blue eyes, but his hair was a little longer than his son's, and he wore a black suit with a white shirt and a tie. His wife was a fair-skinned, slender woman of feminine build with violet eyes. Her red and straight hair reached her shins. She had shoulder-length strands framed both sides of her face, and a black clip parted her hair to the left. She wore a loose dark green dress that reached her ankles. The last person in Izuku's class was a teenager of average height with a slim, muscular build, short, spiky black hair, crimson eyes, and sharp teeth. He wore a blue and white shirt with black cargo pants. With him was his brother, a young teenager with large, bright crimson-red eyes and pure white hair with bangs that fell in front of his face. He was dressed in a light-colored sweater and light-colored pants with legs that stopped just below the knees. Their mother was tall with shoulder-length black hair, sharp teeth and soft dark red eyes. She wore a light yellow shirt, and horns were jutting out of her head. Everyone mingled with Eri walking around, with the mothers and girls gushing over her before Hitoshi's father picked up a cub. "I would like to make an announcement," he said as everyone turned to him. "Boys, I think that I speak for everyone here when I say that we are proud of you for passing and getting into the schools you wanted to get into, and even if you did get to where you wanted in that school," he said while looked at his son with a smile. And Hitoshi smiled back. "Keep moving forward, and you will reach your dream one day, so cheers," he said as everyone cheered him back. Izuku stood at his apartment's door dressed in the UA uniform, with Eri gazing up at her adopted father with a look of sadness, tugging at the heartstrings of those who witnessed her plight. He was clad in a light gray blazer with dark turquoise trimmings over a white dress shirt and dress pants. His red tie, a signature of his attire, was left much shorter than the norm, a quirk that added to his distinct look and piqued the curiosity of those who saw him. "Do you have to go, Papa?" Eri asked Izuku, her eyes brimming with unspoken emotions, which Izuku could sense despite her young age. He smiled at his adopted daughter, his heart heavy with the knowledge of the pain he was causing her. "You know I do, Eri, but if you're a good girl, when I get back, I'll take you out, and we can get you an ice cream or whatever you want," he said as the little girl looked up at Izuku. "Then, I would like an apple ice cream," Eri said as she put her hands on her hips. Izuku looked at her, and she looked adorable in his eyes. "All right, when I get back, I'll take you out and get apple ice cream," he said as Eri nodded and hugged him. Inko watched her son and adopted granddaughter with a gentle smile. "Izuku," she called to her son, who had worn his signature red shoes. "Yeah, Mom," he asked her as he turned to his mother. "You look really cool," she told him proudly, and Izuku smiled back at her and went out the door. The teen with spider powers walked down the road. He pulled out his notebook book and looked through each gadget design as he walked to school. "I've made Eri's watch, and I have that idea for the other things," he thought as he crossed the road. As the green-haired teen made it to the entrance of the US, he heard someone call to him. "Hey there," said one of his Kurenai Academy classmates called to him. "Hey, Ina, how are things?" Izuku said as they walked into the building. As the two walked, they started to make their way up the stairs, heading for their class. "So I overheard that only 32 students made it this year from the normal exam," Ina told his friend. "That means the rest are like you," Izuku said as they made their way up a flight of stairs. "Yep," he said as they reached a gigantic door. "Now that is one big door," Ina said as he opened the door, and the two walked in. And when they did, they saw that an angry Pomeranian and the boy who tried to shout at Izuku were in the same class. Both boys looked on with deadpan faces before turning to each other. "Is it too late for Shiketsu?" Ina asked the green-haired boy, who nodded. "Remove your foot from that desk. Such an action is insulting to those who came before us, and the craftsmanship of the desks," the teen yelled at the angry Pomeranian. "Like I fucking care. And what shitty middle school are you from, you fucking exta?" the Pomeranian shouted back. "I'm from Some Private Academy," the teen told him before putting a hand on his chest, "and my name is Tenya Ida," he said the teen. Name: Tenya Ida. Quirk: Engine. Tenya's quirk gives him car-like engines in each of his calves, which give him incredible running speed and extreme kicking power. Tenya needs to fuel his engines by drinking orange juice. "Some, so you're some stick-up-the-ass elitist bitch," the Pomeranian said to Ida before scoffing. "Shut the fuck up or I'll blow you to bits," he told the teen. "Blow me to bits? Now that is not a way a hero speaks," Ida asked the teen before he spotted Izuku and Ina at the door and walked over to them. "Hello, I am from Some Pre," Ida was saying before Izuku stopped him. "We heard you, Izuku Midoriya," Izuku introduced himself. Name: Izuku Midoriya. Quirk: One for all, transferred to him from Toshinori Yagi, Izuku's quirk allows him to stockpile an enormous amount of raw power, significantly enhancing his physical abilities to various boundless levels. This resulted in unbelievable strength, speed, stamina, agility, and durability. When Izuku activated One for All, red, vein-like lines coursed throughout the empowered part of his body. Other powers. Izuku has powers from a genetically enhanced radioactive spider, giving him many powers. And my name is Inasa Yoarashi, Ina told Ida, who nodded at them. Name. Inasa Yoarashi. Quirk. Whirlwind. Inasa's quirk allows him to manipulate the air around him over a wide area freely. Ida looked over to Izuku with a sharp look. Midoriya, you must have perceived the true nature of the practical exam, where I did not, he told Izuku, who looked at him confused, and I have misjudged you, and I admit here and now you were the superior candidate and you proved it by getting first place in the exam, Ida told Izuku, who still looked confused. May I ask what you are on about? Izuku asked him as Inasa nodded. The rescue points and how you gained so many of them, he told him. Izuku looked at the teen flatly. I was just doing what a hero is supposed to do. Rescue people over stopping the villain, he said as Ida looked confused at the teen. You can always find the villain another time, but the lives of the people in danger must always come first, Izuku told him, sounding wise for his years. As the three talked, the Pomeranian-looking teen looked over at the three. Deku, he muttered as he looked at Izuku, remembering what happened 3 days ago at his home. 3 days ago, Bakugo house, living room. The 3 members of the Bakugo family, along with 2 people, were sitting across from Nezu. The first was a tall man with short black hair and somewhat rectangular eyes, dressed in a black suit, white shirt, and black tie. The other was a tall woman with a curvy body. She had long, indigo-colored hair with numerous scattered pink streaks, usually tied in a ponytail with 2 full shoulder-length strands of hair framing her face. Her eyes were purple with a mauve shade, and she had dark, blue-colored, angled eyebrows. She wore a black suit and a black skirt instead of pants. Thank you for meeting with me today, Nezu told them. The 3 family members smiled at him, and the teen smugly smiled. It's not a problem, but I must ask why you have asked to meet with us, the older male told the animal. You see, it's about your son and the laws that he has violated, Nezu said with a severe look, and the 3 family members looked shocked. While in middle school, Katsuki Bakugo has been using his quirk illegally for at least 5 years. And thanks to the investigation that we had done on Aldera Junior High, we have found that your son is guilty of quirk discrimination, quirkless discrimination, illegally quirk use, and suicide baiting. The man in the suit said as the mother and father looked shocked and white as a sheet with that. Their son has been doing. Now, we usually this case would not even go before a judge with all the evidence that we have along with the team of lawyers that we have backed us, but Izuku Midoriya has stated that he will not push charges onto your son, but as a member of the police and liaison of UA. I have drew up rules that your son must follow if he wants to attend, he said as Bakugo's mother nodded. And he will follow them, she said as Katsuki turned to her. What? He asked her. Name. Katsuki Bakugo. Quirk. Explosion. Katsuki's quirk allows him to secrete nitroglycerin-like sweat from the palms of his hands and ignite it on command, allowing him to create strong explosions. The more Katsuki sweats, the stronger his explosions become. If Katsuki overuses this power, his forearms will start to ache. His mother and father looked at him. I knew that your ego was getting too big, so I'm glad someone is finally doing something about it. So whatever rules are laid out you will follow them or I will be pulling you from UA myself and sending you to another school that will sort you out, she told him with a scowl. Bakugo scoffed before looking off to the side. Now then. Every day, he has to go to Hound Dog for counseling sessions to deal with his anger, and after 1 week, we will see if anything is happening, and if not, he will be pulled from the hero course and sent to general education, but the moment he intends to harm another student, outside of hero training, with his quirk he will be explained from UA and will be sent to Tartarus prison as a letter-rank criminal, the man said as the mother and father nodded. And if he so much as targets Mr. Midoriya while the both of them is that UA, he will be expelled and all evidence will be brought to a judge, Nezu said as the mother and father nodded, but Bakugo scoffed. I thought you said that bring this shit to a judge was fucking useless, he asked the animal. Oh, it will be, but you see, we were going to be kind to you, Nezu said with a frightening smile. If a judge would see this case, you would go down as guilty faster than the S-rank villain Kyoka Suigetsu, he said as Bakugo's skin turned whiter than Nezu's fur. But that is not all, you see. The UA lawyers, along with the lawyer teams of both the pro hero that trained Mr. Midoriya and Island, will be fighting you, the animal said, and the mother and father were shocked. Why would Island help fucking Deku? Bakugo asked Nezu, who smiled sharply to show his teeth. Mr. Midoriya's father works on Island as one of the head scientists, and he is so high up he is part of the Island Council of 12, under the code name of Dragon, Nezu said as the mother and father's eyes shot wide. And while his mother and father are devoured, it is not because their son was thought to be quirkless, but as I heard from both parties, they just fell out of love, Nezu said as the mother looked shocked. That means, she muttered, but her son scowled at Nezu. What do you mean? Thought to be quirkless, he fucking is, Bakugo yelled at the animal. It is not my place to say, but from what I have looked at his medical records, it states that Mr. Midoriya's quirk was a mental quirk that enhanced his cognitive abilities, and thanks to its awakening, we found that it has other aspects to it that relate to spiders, the policeman said as he looked at Bakugo. Now then, we'll be off, he said as the three got up and left, as the three family members did not know what to say. The father was crushed by the information that his son was just a breath away from being a criminal. The mother was thinking about how her best friend had cut all contact with her 10 months ago, and now she knew why, along with why Hisashi had never been living in America like Inko had told her. And Bakugo, knowing that his number one punching bag now had a quirk. So the three just sat in silence, not knowing what to say. Back at the present, Bakugo looked on at Izuku, walking with Ida, and scoffed, I'll find out where Deku got this fucking quirk from and make sure that he knows that he is still beneath me, he thought before he turned his head away from them. Izuku and Inasa managed to get away from Ida as two more people walked in. Oh, it's you, Izuku said, turning to see the girls he saved walking in and over to him. Hey, he said as he was still not used to talking with girls. Thanks, man, for saving us. It looks like Present Mike was right. You're in, the girl with earplugs said to him. But before they could talk, the woman Bakugo remembered was in his house with Nezu. The policeman entered the classroom, carrying a man in a sleeping bag on her shoulder. Oh, good, you all here. Now, let me introduce myself. I am Kana Tsutsumi, otherwise known as Lady Nagant, but you can call me Kana-sensei, Nagant-sensei, or Tsutsumi-sensei. I do not mind either, Lady Nagant said to them all as they nodded, and she smiled at them. Name: Kana Tsutsumi. Hero name: Lady Nagant. Hero rank: 30. Quirk: Rifle. Kana's quirk allows her to extend a rifle from her right elbow. She loads bullets into the gun through a hole in her palm. Her firing range is 3 kilometers. Additionally, she can increase the velocity of her shots by dramatically increasing the rifle's power output, causing the gun barrel to expand and bulge out. However, this does risk the gun jamming. Now, then, I am going to be your main homeroom teacher for your years going through UA, Nagant told them as everyone nodded. Now, this man on my shoulder is your other homeroom teacher, but before we do anything, I would like everyone to introduce themselves and what their quirk is called and something you want to do or something about yourself, she told them as everyone got to a seat. Lady Nagant then pointed to table 1. You go first, she told the person at the desk. The student up is a young girl of average height with surprisingly large, upturned, dusky green eyes, long lower eyelashes, and notably long and pointed teeth. Her hair is dark moss green, collectively reaching just below her shoulders aside from a short clump that hangs in the center of her forehead. It grows wavier and thinner the lower it gets. And when Izuku looked at her, he spotted something that made him stop and look around. There were more female students in the room than male students. Hey, my name is Setsuna Tokage, my quirk is called Lizard Tail Splitter, and I like prehistoric history, Setsuna said as she stood up. Name: Setsuna Tokage. Quirk: Lizard Tail Splitter. Setsuna's quirk allows her to split her body into as many as 50 pieces. She can remotely make each piece move freely and levitate through the air at high speeds. Setsuna's pieces can also regenerate if destroyed or otherwise become unusable. The next to stand up was a girl of medium height, possibly set a little more broadly than some of her other female classmates. Her skin is a light shade of pink, and she has somewhat square-shaped eyes with black sclerae and yellow irises and notably long eyelashes below and around the sides of her eyes. Her face is framed by short, fluffy, unruly pink hair slightly darker than her skin. She also has two thin pale yellow horns protruding from her head, hooked squarely and leaning diagonally to opposite sides, which are flexible and can bend slightly to each side. Hi everyone, I'm Mina Ashido. My quirk is called Acid, and my hobby is dancing, Mina said before she sat down. Name: Mina Ashido. Quirk: Acid. Mina's quirk allows her to produce a corrosive liquid from her body. She can control the solubility and viscosity of this corrosive liquid. However, she can only make it for a limited time until her skin gradually loses its natural resistance. Overusing her quirk or pushing it too far can also be fatal, as it dehydrates her body very fast. The next one to stand up was a short girl of a relatively slender build and had notably large hands. Her appearance is rather frog-like. She has a wide mouth, which dips down a little in the middle just like a common frog, and oval-shaped eyes with large, black irises, their lower eyelashes visibly pronounced. Her hair is a dark sea green and very long, reaching to her waist with the ends tied together at the bottom in a large bow. Two shoulder-length clumps frame her face, and shorter bangs, some partially swept to each side, are between her eyes. My name is Suyu Asui, but please call me Su, Suyu said as she spoke, ribbed like a frog. My quirk is frog, and I like swimming, she told everyone before sitting down again. Name: Suyu Asui. Quirk: Frog. Suyu's quirk gives her a frog's physiology. Ida was the next to sign up. My name is Tenya Ida, and my quirk is Engine, and I like reading history books, he said before he sat down. Ochako then stood up. I'm Ochako Uraraka. My quirk is zero gravity, and I really like space, she said before she sat back down. Name: Ochako Uraraka. Quirk: Zero gravity. Ochako's quirk gives her the power to nullify the effects of gravity on solid targets, living and non-living, by touching them with the pads on her fingertips. This causes them to become weightless and float. She can cancel the effect of her quirk by touching her fingertips together. Then, there was a girl of medium height and slim build. She had teal eyes and long orange hair that she typically wore tied into a high ponytail on the left side of her head. Her bangs were split into 3 clumps around her eyes, and some of her hair was stuck in large tufts at the top of her head. My name is Itsuka Kendo, and my quirk is called Big Fist, Kendo said, smiling at her classmates. My hobby is martial arts, she told everyone. Name: Itsuka Kendo. Quirk: Big Fist. Itsuka's quirk allows her to enlarge her hands to a gigantic size, which enhances her striking power and gripping capabilities. The next was a pale-skinned young woman of average height. She has chin length, pale gray hair parted on her right, which obscures the majority of the left side of her face. She has dark bags under her blue eyes and a small mouth with full lips. Her hands are usually held up as high as her elbows, with her hands down. My name is Reiko Yanagi. My quirk is called Poltergeist, and I like horror movies, Yanagi told everyone. Name: Reiko Yanagi. Quirk: Poltergeist. Reiko's quirk lets her telekinetically control nearby objects. Its weight limit is roughly the weight of the average human. Hi everyone, my name is Pony Sunotori, but please call me Pony as that is what I'm used to, the next student said as she stood up. Pony is a short girl with a round face and a short equine muzzle, framed by thick, wavy blonde hair that reaches halfway down her back, with shorter bangs hanging down her forehead. Her eyes are large and round, Prussian blue, and she has a pair of tall, lyre-shaped pale tan horns on her head. Her calves are notably rounded, shaped similarly to those of a horse, and she has brown hooves and a short horse tail poking out from the end of her tailbone. Name: Pony Sunotori. Quirk: Horn Cannon. Pony's quirk gives her a pair of horns on her head. She can launch her horns as projectiles, and a new set will grow back almost immediately. She can remotely control up to 4 of them at a time. The next to stand up is a tall young man of a broad, muscular build with peach-colored skin. His head is shaped like a rock, unevenly shaped and pointed at the top, and his jaw is square. From the back of his head, thick hair-like protrusions slope downwards. Hi everyone my name I is Koji Koda, the na name o of my quirk I is ca called Anavoice, and I ha have a lot o of pay pets, Koda said as the girls smiled at him. Name: Koji Koda. Quirk: Anavoice. Koji's quirk allows him to command any creature in the animal kingdom by speaking to them. Whatever command he provides, the animal will carry out. However, he cannot exert control if they cannot hear his command. The target must also be a real animal and not merely animal-like. Koji can also exchange information with the animals to find the locations of various people and potential enemies faster. Next was a young girl with shoulder-length, bob-shaped hair, side-swept to her right, with shorter strands hanging above her eyes. She has fair skin, an athletic build, and cerulean eyes, and she's usually seen wearing a neutral expression on her face. My name is Yui Kodai. I like building mecha and my quirk is called Size, Yui said without changing her face. Name: Yui Kodai. Quirk: Size. Yui's quirk allows her to alter the size of any inanimate object she touches. She can return objects to their original size by pressing her fingertips together. The next one that stood up was a short girl of a relatively thin build with honey brown hair curved inwards in a mushroom-shaped bob that reached just below her narrow shoulders. She has a long fringe that completely covers her eyes, hiding most of her face, and her mouth is large. Unobscured, her eyes are wide and cat-like, tilted inwards with rather long lower eyelashes, and her irises are warm brown. Her pupils are little black crosses resembling the caps of cross-sliced shiitake mushrooms. Hi, everyone, my name is Kanoko Komori, my quirk is called Mushroom, and I like to cook, Kanoko said. Name: Kanoko Komori. Quirk: Mushroom. Kanoko's quirk allows her to spread various fungal spores from her body. The spores will quickly grow into full-grown mushrooms upon making contact with a solid surface. The mushrooms can develop from multiple surfaces, including Kanoko's surroundings, body, and opponent's body. They only last for 2 to 3 hours. 3. The spores spread better in a humid environment. Kyoka was the next to stand up next. My name is Kyoka Jiro. My quirk, as you can see, is these jacks. It's called Earphone Jack, and I like to make music, she said as people nodded. Name: Kyoka Jiro. Quirk: Earphone Jack. Kyoka's quirk is that she has a pair of headphone jacks hanging from her earlobes. When the jacks are plugged into something, Kyoka can channel the sound of her heartbeat through them as a violent vibration attack. She can stretch her earlobes several meters. This quirk also allows her to hear minuscule sounds and vibrations from her surroundings. The next to stand up was a girl of medium height with green, thorn-covered vines for hair, one set wrapped around her forehead a couple of times in the shape of a cross. Hello, everyone. Abara Shiozaki. My quirk is called Vines, and I am a devout Christian, Abara said to everyone before she sat down. Name: Abara Shiozaki. Quirk: Vines. Abara's quirk gives her hair like vines that grow on her head. She can lengthen and manipulate the vines, allowing her to attack, defend, and grapple. She can also detach them at will. The vines will grow back, provided her head receives proper sunlight and water. The next is a short young man with the head of a black bird, possibly supposed to resemble that of a crow or a raven. He has a tan, yellowish beak slightly hooked down at the end, thin, red eyes with a small black pupil, one on each side of his head, and a red choker, which he rarely removes. Despite the appearance of his head, his body looks like that of an average human with relatively fair skin. Good morning, Fumikage Tokiyami. My quirk is a sentient quirk called Dark Shadow, and I like gothic horror, Tokiyami said as a shadow-like being with a bird head waved at everyone out of his body. Hey everyone, Dark Shadow told everyone. Name: Fumikage Tokiyami. Quirk: Dark Shadow. Fumikage's quirk allows him to manifest a sentient shadow monster from his body that he can materialize and contract freely. Dark Shadow's energy is limited and can be drained by bright light. Dark Shadow retracts into Fumikage's body when it runs out of energy. Well, that is something new, someone muttered as everyone looked around for the person who spoke but found no one. The next was a moderately tall and somewhat muscular young woman who was well built for her age. She had straight, long hair that reached her mid-back and was tied back in a French braid with her bangs parted twice to avoid obscuring his vision. Her hair is evenly split between white on her right side and crimson red on her left. She also possesses heterochromia iridium, which causes his left eye's iris to appear turquoise, while his right is a brownish dark gray. Her eyes, in shape, are pretty thin and reserved. Additionally, he has a large burn scar on the left side of his face, which reaches from his hairline to halfway down his cheek. My name is Shoto Todoroki. My quirk is called half cold half hot, and I like soba, she told them. Inasa rolled his eyes at her before she sat back down. Name: Shoto Todoroki. Quirk: half cold half hot. Shoto's quirk allows her to generate ice from the right side of her body and flames from her left side. The following person who stood up was invisible. Hey everyone, my name is Toru Hagakure, and my quirk is called invisibility, and I like drama, she said to everyone. Name: Toru Hagakure. Quirk: invisibility. Toru's quirk is that her body is entirely invisible. Bakugo then stood up. Alright, you fucking extras, remember my name. And it's Katsuki Bakugo, so you best remember it. My quirk is the best fucking quirk in this motherfucking room, and it's called Explosion, and I'm going to be the next #1 hero, he said as Izuku rolled his eyes at him before he stood up. Hello, everyone, my name is Izuku Midoriya. My quirk is known as Spider Physiology, and I have an adopted daughter, Izuku said as everyone looked at him and shocked him as Izuku sat down. Inasa stood up next. Inasa Yoarashi. My quirk is called Whirlwind, and I like to play baseball, he said to everyone as the last person stood up. She is a tall teenage girl with a mature physique. She has long black hair, generally tied into a spiky ponytail with a significant strand hanging on the right side of her face. Her eyes are big yet sharp, dark in color, and paired with short eyebrows set in a determined expression. Good morning, everyone. My name is Momo Yaoyorozu. Name: my quirk is called Creation, and I like reading encyclopedias, Momo said. Name: Momo Yaoyorozu. Quirk: Creation. Momo's quirk allows her to create any non-living material, object from her exposed skin by transforming the molecular structure of her fat cells. To create something, she needs to understand the molecular structure of what the material object is made of. After she sat back down, Lady Nagant smiled at the class. Right then, the first thing we're going to do today is go to orientation. Then we're going to quirk apprehension test, she told everyone as the voice that no one knew came up once more. It is a waste of time, they said as Nagant rolled her eyes and looked over to the sleeping bag on her shoulder. Yes, but as you have been a bad teacher for the last 3 years, you are now not the main homeroom teacher anymore, she said to the sleeping bag as she turned to the door and showed that there was a person in who was a pale-skinned man with messy, shoulder-length black hair that partially hangs in front of his face and half-opened black eyes. Everyone looked at each other before they followed their teachers out the door down to the main hall. Nezu walked out onto the stage. All the rest of the staff walked onto the stage with him. Hello, I am principal of this very school, and if you look under your chairs, you all will find a gift bag with a map of our school along with the teachers of this school, Nezu told everyone. Everyone from Class 1A stood outside in their PE kit as they stood across from Lady Nagant. The PE kit, a distinctive ensemble of dark blue pants with striking white vertical lines and a matching short-sleeve shirt with the iconic U and A formed by white lines, was the day's uniform. Now that you're all out here, we're going to be going through the same tests so that I and your other homeroom teacher can get a better evaluation of your strength and what your quirk can do, she said as she put down the sleeping bag before looking at it. Get out, Lady Nagant noted as the man grumbled and crawled out of the sleeping bag. He was a slender, tall, pale-skinned man with messy, shoulder-length black hair partially hanging in front of his face and half-opened black eyes. His facial hair was stubbly and unkempt, and his eyes were tired and flat. He sports a baggy black outfit that consists of a long-sleeved shirt and matching pants that tuck into his boots. He also always wore a utility belt and a wrap scarf. "Midoriya, as you got the highest score in the exam, you throw first and use your full strength," the man said as he tossed an orange ball with sensors over to Izuku. "Take it over to that circle and do not step out of the circle," he said as he pointed his thumb over to a circle on the ground. Izuku walked over to Bakugo and narrowed his eyes. Time to see if Deku is full of shit or not and where this bastard got a fucking quirk out of nowhere, he thought as he watched as Izuku walked into the circle. Everyone watched as teal electricity started to arc off his body while his eyes gained a black spider web pattern within them. The sudden display of Izuku's unexpected power shocked Ida and his classmates. Their wide eyes mirrored their surprise. There is a species of spider that can generate static electricity to enhance their body, and that is what Izuku is doing, and since spiders are naturally strong as they can lift up to 50 times their body weight, Inasa said as everyone's eyes shot wide as Izuku threw the ball. The next thing people knew was that a sonic boom was filling the air. "Next time, hold back a bit," Lady Nagant said as she shook her head. The man narrowed his eyes at Izuku as everyone waited. And waited. And waited. Until 3,526.5 meters, the man read from his tablet. Bakugo was unhappy, but Lady Nagant gave him one look and told everyone. So he did not move. Brimming with excitement, the students eagerly awaited the details of the upcoming tests, their anticipation palpable in the air. "We get to use our quicks, cool," Mina said as she pumped her fist. The man opened his mouth, but Nagant stopped him with a look as they moved to the first test. It was a 50-meter sprint. "Two of you will run simultaneously," Nagant told everyone as she looked at her tablet. "Ida, Yoarashi, you two first," she called out as Inasa stood at the starting line with Ida. A robot raised a starting pistol before shooting it. The two boys ran to the other end, and Ida went faster, thanks to the engines in his legs. 3.4 seconds. The robot said as both teachers put down the score, and then after a little bit, 4 seconds, the robot called out again. The other students got their scores before Izuku and Bakugo stood at the start line. When the starting pistol went off, Bakugo seemed to blink, but Izuku was already ahead of him and got his score first. 3.25 seconds, the robot told the teachers. And what did he get? 4.13 seconds. The robot said as Bakugo's eyes were now fueled with anger at Izuku, who was talking with Inasa. "That damn bastard, how did that happen?" Bakugo cursed, his eyes filled with anger and the rivalry between him and Izuku becoming more intense. "Next, we are going to do grip strength for each and every one of you," the man who looked like a hobo said as robots rolled out and gave each student a machine with a gate on it. Momo had created a clamp for her while Kyoka used her jacks to get her reading. But Izuku held the machine and tested his grip as the word error formed. "Ma'am," Izuku called out as Lady Nagant and the man turned to him, saw the word, and nodded at each other. "You passed this test," the man said as he put down, "in the tons." Bakugo got more enraged once he saw that. The next test was a long jump, and some of the students managed to get into the sandbox, with a few clearing it. Izuku was allowed to use his web shooters. Next were the repeated side steps. Everyone performed well before returning to the ball throwing. Ochako got the best score of infinity, and then it was Bakugo's turn. "I'll get it further than that shitty Deku and remind him of his true place in this world, beneath my fucking boot," he thought as he got ready before he sent the ball flying with an explosion and the scream of, "Die!" Bakugo called out as people looked at him with uninterest. 705.2 meters. Lady Nagant called out at Bakugo's eyes shot wide before he called his fists and narrowed his eyes at Izuku. But before he could move, both teachers were behind him. Lady Nagant's arm turned into a rifle and pointed the barrel at the back of Bakugo, while the hobo-looking man had his long hair floating above him and his scarf tied around Bakugo. "Please don't tell me that you're going to do something stupid on your first day," Lady Nagant told Bakugo. Everyone was shocked by what happened, but Izuku was not looking at that, he was looking at the male teacher. "You the Eraser hero." "Eraser head," Izuku said as everyone looked at the team. "He's known as the third best underground hero," with first place being the American hero Batman and the second being the British hero Doom Lord, he added as people looked at the teacher with respect. Name: Shota Aizawa. Hero name: Erasure Hero, Eraser Head. Hero rank: 400. Quirk: Erasure. Shota's quirk allows him to nullify another person's quirk by looking at the user. The effects of this quirk can still last even if Shota's line of vision is out of range. Don't even try it, Aizawa said into Bakugo's ear as the teen looked at him out the corner of his eye. I was told about you, and I was the one that told them to see if you can be a hero, so don't use the chance I have given you, and waste it, he told him as Bakugo looked at Aizawa as his eye moved over to the rifle arm aimed at him before he stood down. Good. We're going to give you a change as you did not do anything, so be glad of that, Lady Nagant said as she turned her arm back to normal before looking at the others. Now, we're moving indoors for the following 2 tests, she told everyone as they followed her into the gym building. The next test is to see how flexible you all are, Aizawa said as everyone saw mats on the floor. Everyone stand on a mat and see if you can touch your toes. He told them that when they did, a few people managed to do it, with Ida sitting upright like a board while Izuku and Mina quickly did this test. Both showed flexibility as they did poses and moves that only an Olympic athlete could do. Spidey, every time I see you do stuff like that it always gives me the willies, Inasa said to Izuku as the green-haired boy had his legs going past his arms and interlocking past his head, and how I would break my back if I even tried that. He added with a smile as shifted his pose with one hand still on the ground as he planked in the air before the teacher said it was enough, so he pushed off his arm and landed in a crouch before standing up. Spider powers for the win, Izuku said. Inasa rolled his eyes jokingly at Izuku but smiled anyway. Now, you going to do some sit-ups, and when you reach your limit you will stop, Lady Nagant told everyone as robots came over and helped hold the students' feet. When everyone started doing the sit-ups, Bakugo kept his passing with Izuku. But that failed as Izuku passed the 200 mark, and the teachers looked at him before asking him to stop. They did the same when they walked outside for the next test, a distance run with Izuku. Momo went the longest with Izuku using his stamina, while Momo created an electric scooter with a solar panel that she rode on. After everyone had finished doing the distance run, both teachers stood and started to look through the scores before they showed everyone a hologram. It was how everyone performed. First, Izuku Midoriya. Second, Momo Yaoyorozu. Third, Inasa Yoarashi. Fourth, Shoto Todoroki. Fifth, Setsuna Tokage. Sixth, Katsuki Bakugo. Seventh, Tenya Ida. Eighth, Fumikage Tokiyami. Ninth, Pony Tsunotori. 10th, Itsuka Kendo. 11th, Reiko Yanagi. 12th, Mina Ishido. 13th, Ochako Uraraka. 14th, Koji Koda. 15th, Yui Kodai. 16th, Tsuyu Asui. 17th, Abara Shiozaki. 18th, Kyoka Jiro. 19th, Toru Hagakuri. 20th, Kanoko Komori. What the fuck is this shit? I did not even fucking make the top fucking 5. I'm fucking 6th. What fucking bullshit is this? Bakugo thought with veins popping on his head as he looked over to Izuku with pure hate in his eyes. This was all good, and I have to say that I am somewhat surprised by the scores that some of you preformed, and so I am happy to say that you will have the rest of the day off, Lady Nagant said as Aizawa looked over to Izuku. Midoriya, Nezu wants to walk with your quirk awakening and about the girl you've abducted. He said that he has found leads, he told the teen as Izuku nodded, and everyone went and got changed. And after he did, he followed his map towards the principal's office before he heard something in his head. If this creature so much as eats me, I will kill it from the insecty, it said, and the teen looked around before knocking on the door. Come in, Nezu called out, and the teen walked in and onto Nezu's desk at a glass cage. It was the spider that bit him. That human, the spider thought as he moved closer to the cage, and Izuku now heard it was a female. Thank you for coming, Mr. Midoriya. As you can see, the spider that gave you your powers is indeed alive, and I ahve to say after studying them, Nezu was saying before Izuku looked away from the spider for a second. She, was all he said. Pardon? Nezu asked, surprised. The spider, she a female, Izuku said as he turned back to the spider. And both of them just looked at each other. I see, and if you do not mind, how can you tell? Nezu asked as he watched Izuku sit in a chair before his desk. I can hear her in my head, Izuku said as Nezu looked interested before she opened the cage. The teen held out a hand as the spider crawled across the desk and into his, and his two eyes met with 8. So you're the human that I bit as a last resort, she told Izuku as she looked up at the teen. And you squished me, she said as if she could. Izuku thought she was raising a brow at him. I was not my intention to squish you, but you bit me and so I wanted to get you off me, he told her as she looked at him. I see, she said before Nezu coughed, attracting their attention as they both turned to him. It's good to see that you're getting along, but I would like to know if this little lady knows about where she came from, Nezu asked as Izuku looked at her. Yes, it was a place that they called Lab 5, and they said a worn name, Joman, she said as Izuku told Nezu everything she was saying. The animal hybrid wrote this all down before he nodded. I see, I'll run the name through a database, Nezu said before he looked at Izuku. Now, let's move on to the news that I do not want to give, he said as Izuku nodded at him. Is it about Eri? Izuku asked him. Yes, the animal said as he handed over a report to Izuku, who looked it over as his eyes narrowed. What is it? The spider asked as she crawled onto Izuku's shoulder to read the report with him before raising her front legs to attack the paper. So you telling me that Eri is related to a member of the Yakuza? Izuku asked him as Nezu nodded at the teen. Yes, but it gets more complicated, Nezu said as he turned his laptop around to show Izuku before the teen cursed under his breath. Indeed, and that is not all. You see from what I managed to get from Night Eye that Eri was used in an experiment with her blood, he said as Izuku narrowed his eyes. So they want to use her blood for something, but then that would mean, Izuku said as his eyes widened along with the spider's eyes on his shoulder. That's right, Nezu said with a grim nod. They want to use her quirk for something nefarious, and her quirk is something that I would not wish on my enemy, he said as Izuku looked down at the paper once more. This explains her scars, he said as Nezu nodded again. I've been looking into a way to heal her body and get rid of the scars, but I'm still in the testing procedure, he said as a side note, as the animal said, but Izuku put the paper down. The Yakuza that is going after Eri is not the real one, or instead not run by the true boss, as it has been taken by someone of the name Kaichisaki, otherwise known as Overhaul, and that is all we've managed to gather so far, and I'm sorry that it was not more, Nezu told his student. Izuku nodded as he stood up and looked over to the spider on his shoulder before looking at Nezu. Can I take her with me? He asked the principal, who nodded. Yes, he said as Izuku walked over to the door. Where are you taking me? The spider asked Izuku as they left the office. I'm taking you home, and I'm going to look after you, he said as he looked at the spider, who looked surprised at him. Really? She asked him as Izuku nodded. Yeah, he said as he turned and walked down the stairs. So what shall I call you? Izuku asked her as he made his way down. I was called Subject 9, but I want a name like you and the White One, she said as Izuku nodded. That's understandable, Izuku told her before reaching his locker. Before he smiled, how about, Arachnid, he asked her as she looked at him. Why that name? She asked him as Izuku collected his stuffed things and walked out the door. It's the name of the mother of spiders, and I was thinking that a name of power would fit the spider that gave me powers, he said as the now named Arachnid smiled at him. I like that, she said as she crawled up to his head, and the two made their way home. The next day, 1A homeroom classroom. Izuku, with Arachnid now on his shoulder as people looked at him, freaked out, but he explained that she would not hurt anyone. It soon became clear that the girls fell in love with the Arachnid when Arachnid was weaving webs around them and making pictures. She even helped Izuku deal with the girls, and when their English lesson was over, people could not wait. So heroics is the next lesson for today, Inasa said to Izuku, who nodded. Yep, I wonder who the teacher is going to be, he said as he thought back to the orientation, and then his eyes shot wide. It's Toshi-sensei, he whispered as Inasa looked amazed. I am here, All Might's voice called out. The students' eyes shot wide. They all looked at the door in amazement as the man swung it open. coming through the door like a normal person," he said as he walked into the room, and both Inasa, Izuku, and Arachnid's sweat dropped at him. "How is that like a normal person?" The three of them thought before Izuku and Arachnid looked at each other and smiled that Izuku did not need to speak out loud to talk with her. As the students chatted with one another, All Might walked over to the podium. "Today is the class that will start you with your lives when you graduate UA and become heroes, and so today your first heroics lesson shall be battle training," he told them all as he showed them a card with the word battle on it. "But before we get to the lesson, I'm going to let you all get changed into your costumes," he said as he pressed a button. Briefcases with numbers on them popped out of the wall. "Now head to ground beta and then get changed so the lesson can start," he said before leading the students out the door. 10 minutes later, ground beta. Everyone stood in their costumes as they waited for the class to start. Setsuna's costume consists of a purple, scaly mask over her eyes, a simple bodysuit with a matching design, and black knee-high boots. She also wears black fingerless gloves with purple, scaly knuckle guards and pale orange, three-piece wrist guards. She wears a black belt around her waist with what looks to be a yellow jewel embedded into the center. Mina wore a plain white mask with thin lines over her eyes and a purple and turquoise skin-tight bodysuit with a camouflage pattern ending just above her beeps. Over this, she wore a cropped, sleeveless, tan-colored waistcoat with white fur along its collar, which she left unbuttoned. She also wore custom-made plum violet and beige acid-proof boots with holes in the soles, allowing her to secrete acid from her feet and slide around. Then there was Suyu, whose costume consisted of a bright green turtleneck bodysuit, tan-colored gloves with large green buckles on each wrist guard, and two matching belts, one above her beeps, a strap at either side going around her shoulders and one around her waist, little holes embedded into it all the way around. Two black lines run down her suit, each framed with a yellow outline, and she wears tight black boots with yellow markings in the shape of a V on her thighs and green webbed flippers resembling frogs' toes on her feet. She wears a headband with a color matching that of her gloves and goggles with dark green tinted lenses attached on either side and a thin dark green mask that goes along the middle of her face. Ida's costume made him look like a knight with a dark blue one-piece suit with a high collar, over which he wears various pieces of armor, all in pale silver, including a chest plate, a metal collar around his neck and another around his upper arm, and metal vambraces that extend past his elbows pointed at the ends. He wears a helmet covering his entire face, its sharp bevel full of holes to allow him to speak and breathe easily, and its upper piece rounded over his head with two larger holes on either side, two curved horns just behind and a single spike sticking out of the back of his head. While on his feet, he wears silver knee-high boots with gold accessories, which are specialized for his quirk, and around his torso, he has three thick metal pipes attached with a blue band, although these only serve as decoration. His armor is very lightweight and does not protect him much. Its primary purpose is to cut down air resistance rather than to protect him. Ochako's was a black, full-body suit with a pale pink design down the middle of her torso, topped with two black semi-spheres on her chest, two pink stripes starting at her midsection, a deep pink choker, and two-toned pink sleeves with cuffs. It also has matching pale and deep pink-colored accessories, including round gauntlets with handles, which are used to increase and decrease her blood pressure, chunky, knee-high boots with deep pink shock-absorbent soles and gray heels that have stiff springs in them to soften landings, and a two-piece belt with a round buckle. She sometimes wears matching headgear with a tinted visor, which is used to lessen stress on her ear canals. Kendo's costume was a teal knee-length kipao with yellow accents, with a black double-beeped corset ending just below her beeps. She also sports black short pants under the kipao. For accessories, she wears a loose brown utility belt around her hips with two long containers attached at the back, a thin black domino mask around her eyes, and white-heeled navy blue boots with wide vamps that reach down to her toes filled with white slips. Yanagi's costume consisted of a very pale blue, knee-length kimono with a white, puffy furred collar, three dark straps around her waist, white lines in between, and a white container on the back. She also sports dark blue knee-high boots with black soles and a black mask covering her face from the bridge of her nose to the end of her neck. Then there was Pony, whose horse-themed costume matched her appearance and quirk. She wears a horse halter around her head with a lead rope dangling from the back, and her outfit resembles a jockey uniform. It consists of an orange skin-tight shirt with paler markings around her chest and stomach, matching colored pants, and a pair of fingerless gloves with orange tips. She wears belts secured around her collarbone, biceps, lower torso, and boots that guard her hooves and have stirrups on either side. Kata's costume was a tight yellow suit that reached only to his knees and elbows. A large red marking was over his torso and at the ends of his sleeves. On his chest, there was a symbol resembling an open mouth, and he wore yellow shoes with red lining. Then there was Yui, who was dressed in a simple red bodysuit with a white collar trim, a matching V pattern running over her chest and around her upper arms, which also included a short white skirt with a red design at the front, dipping so it follows the one in her chest. Yui wears white vambraces with yellow accents and a hat that resembles the front of a baseball cap and a white strap in the back, colored red with white U-shaped lines around the sides and 2 yellow dots on the top, with a metal piece resembling a fin attached at the back of the strap around her head. Kanoko was the next one. Her costume was a turtleneck dress with long sleeves and furred cuffs decorated with a red and white fly agaric pattern that matched the one on her mushroom cap-shaped hat. She wears pale pink knee-high boots with thick tan soles and frilled shafts patterned with the same fly agaric as her dress. Around her waist is a dark brown belt with a large golden buckle. Kyoka's costume made her look like a rocker. She wore a black leather jacket, a long salmon-colored shirt with several rips at the collar and hem, black pants, and boots. She also had 2 minor, triangular red paint marks below her eyes, a plain black choker, and white fingerless gloves. Abara was dressed in a plain white robe, similar to a toga, and dark brown knee-high boots. Tokiyami was the next one as he was in what looked like a black robe tinted a dark purple where the light hit it, covering his entire body, only stopping halfway down his shins and knee-high black boots. Shoto was dressed in a plain off-white shirt with matching pants and boots, with 2 gold-colored straps over her shoulders, attached to a similar colored tactical vest. She has what appears to be a material resembling ice covering her left side, even her head, with the eye socket glowing red. Then there was a pair of floating light blue gloves decorated by pale pink lines and light brownish-gray lace-up shoes, so that was Heigaku. Then was the Pomeranian in the room, whose costume consisted of a tight, black, sleeveless tank top with an orange X across the middle, forming a V-neck. There are 2 dots along the left line of his collar. His costume also has a metallic neck brace with rectangular ends and 3 holes on each side. His black sleeves reach from within his large grenade-like gauntlets to his biceps, with a thin orange tip at the end. A green and orange belt with grenades holds up his baggy pants with green straps and knee guards. He sports black, knee-high combat boots with orange soles, 8 eyelets, and straps on top. His mask is jagged and black, and as it goes around his eyes, a large, orange-rimmed flare shape protrudes from each side. Izuku's consumption had a blue and red color scheme. The body, head, outer arms, upper hip, and knee-high boots are red, while the inner arms, upper legs, and outer torso are matte blue. The colors are in a bright tone, especially in the red coloring. The eye lenses are black on the outline and white in the middle. They are also vast. The spider insignia is small, fist-sized, and centered above the chest. There is another spider insignia at the back, but it's red and big instead of black. The webbed shooters are located in the wrists. The boots are also slightly below the knee, with black outlining covering them and the feet. The black outlining resembles a spider's web, especially on the mask area and the torso. These outlines split the suit into rectangular segments, which are especially visible on the torso area, neck, and shoulders. Arachnid, on his shoulder, wore a tiny costume that he had made her. It looked like his suit, with his spider symbol on her thorax. Inasa's hero costume is a thick burgundy suit pinned with yellow buttons. A cape is DD over his shoulders, the collar lined with dense fur, and it almost conceals the jetpack-like propulsion system attached to his back. His left arm is entirely hidden by the thick, brown material and his hand sports a large tan glove with air pipes on it, whereas his right arm is wholly exposed other than the skin-tight blue sleeve that appears to be a part of his undersuit. Similarly to his left hand are several tubes around his torso and ankles. Plates resembling gas masks pad his knees and left shoulder, and he completes his costume with large brown shoes and a pair of goggles around his head. Momo's costume consisted of a high-collared, sleeveless crimson leotard with silver lines at her waist and around her arms, which is open to expose her skin from her neck to just below her navel. She sports calf-length red boots with heels, which dip sharply down in the center, 2 gold utility belts around her waist, the back holding her books on composition information, and another thinner one around the top of her chest, below her shoulders. "You all look amazing," All Might told them as they walked towards him, each smiling in their own way as they got closer to their dreams of becoming heroes. "So are you ready?" he asked them. "Hello, everyone, I just wanted to let you know that I'm putting this chapter on a break for a while, and I would like you all to be patient with me and please enjoy my other stories that I have up for offer for you guys." Now, with that out of the way, with the Shans with Arachnid crawling over Izuku, it was hard for me, and I suffer from arachnophobia, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, so keep blazing forward, my little genin. To be continue, I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.